I don't usually do gallery openings. Never felt at home in rooms full of people pretending to find meaning in smudged paint and rusty wire sculptures while they sip wine they pretend to enjoy. But Monica loved these things. She said they made her feel connected to the world, whatever that meant. And tonight she asked me to be there, to show face, to smile, to support her. So I put on a button-down, cleaned up my beard, and went. It was downtown Seattle, some converted warehouse space with exposed beams and too much white light. The whole room smelled faintly like wet concrete and lavender air freshener. There were hors d'oeuvres on silver trays floating around on the hands of hired servers. The music was soft jazz, just loud enough to make real conversation inconvenient. Typical. I was standing near a black and white photograph of a woman staring into nothing when I saw her, Monica, across the room. And she wasn't alone. She was dancing. Slowly. With a man I didn't recognize. He had a tailored look like he'd walked straight out of a catalog, tall, clean lines, expensive hair. A little too polished to be real. His hand rested low on Monica's back, fingers spreading confidently across the fabric of her emerald dress. Not a new dress, one I remembered buying her for our anniversary 2 years ago. She hadn't worn it in a while. I didn't ask why back then. I'm starting to see why now. But it wasn't just the way he held her, it was the way she let him. They moved together like they practiced this. Like this wasn't their first time. And then I saw them, his cufflinks. Small, silver, oval-shaped. The exact ones I'd found under the passenger seat of Monica's car back in February. I still remember that day. I had taken her car to get the oil changed and spotted something glinting under the seat. At first, I thought maybe they were mine, left behind during some rushed morning ride. But when I pulled them out, I didn't recognize them. Definitely not mine. When I asked her about it, she barely looked up from her laptop. Said they belonged to a coworker named Eli. Apparently, she had given him a ride after some meeting. He must have dropped them. I was going to give them back, she added too quickly. I believed her. Or rather, I forced myself to believe her. Because believing the alternative would mean acknowledging that something was already broken. Now here he was. In the flesh. Eli. And Monica? She looked radiant. Eyes shining. Lips curled into a smile I hadn't seen aimed at me in months. It wasn't the polite, forced grin she used when we hosted dinner parties. This was the smile, the real one. The one she used to give me before Sunday mornings in bed, before road trips and lazy walks through Pike Place. The one that made me fall for her in the first place. It gutted me. I watched them for a while. Too long, probably. I was standing next to a sculpture made of melted vinyl records pretending to read the artist bio while my eyes stayed locked on the dance floor. They moved together like something out of a dream or maybe a memory. People around them clapped softly, politely. I doubt they even noticed. When the music stopped, they separated reluctantly. Monica walked over to grab a drink and I saw my window. I met her at the bar. She looked surprised to see me there. You're still here? She asked, like it hadn't been her idea for me to come in the first place. Yeah, I said. Just soaking in the culture. She laughed. Light, casual. I hated how practiced it sounded. Then I leaned in. Not close enough to make a scene. Just close enough for her to hear me clearly. One more dance with him, I said, and I walk. For good. She blinked. Smiled again, only this time it was different. Tight around the edges. Don't be dramatic, James. I didn't say anything else. I just stared at her. Let the silence between us carry all the weight I didn't have the energy to spell out. She looked down at her wine glass, swirled it, then took a sip. The stemware shook just a little in her hand. Maybe nerves. Maybe guilt. Or maybe she just didn't care. The next track started, a slower one. Piano heavy. In asterisk mate. Without a word, she turned and walked back toward Eli. He met her halfway. Hand extended like they'd rehearsed this part, too. She took it. And just like that, they were dancing again. Something in me snapped, but it didn't feel like rage. It felt like acceptance. Cold, sharp, and quiet. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw a drink or shout across the gallery. I just walked to the far end of the room, sat on a bench under a painting I couldn't even see, and watched the two of them float under the lights. Everyone around them smiled. None of them knew. I sat there thinking about all the little signs I'd ignored over the past year. The late nights at the office. The new perfume she only wore when I wasn't around. The way she always turned her phone face down. The way her hugs had started to feel like greetings instead of goodbyes. And now here we were. When the song ended, they lingered. He brushed a strand of hair from her face like he owned the right. She laughed. Touched his chest. I stood up. Walked outside into the chill Seattle air. My breath came out in clouds. My hands were shaking, not with anger, but with a kind of grief I didn't know how to name. I sat on a bench across the street from the gallery. People passed me by without looking. Cars rolled past like waves. The world was still turning, even as mine had stopped. I looked up at the windows of the gallery, glowing like some kind of alternate universe. And I knew this wasn't some misunderstanding or one-time mistake. This was a choice. One she had made the moment she stepped into his arms. So I made one too. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, still wearing the same clothes I had on at the gallery. I hadn't really slept. Just lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, the events of the night before looping in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. Monica hadn't texted. Hadn't called. Nothing. When I finally got up and made myself a pot of coffee, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I wasn't shocked by what I saw. Hurt? Yes. Shaken? Absolutely. But shocked? No. That would have required me to believe everything had been fine before last night. And it hadn't been. Not for a long time. You don't get to that moment by accident. It builds. Quietly over time. Like mold behind drywall. So I sat at the kitchen table and started replaying everything, every odd moment, every excuse, every little red flag I tucked away and told myself not to worry about. 6 months ago, she started working late. A lot. At first, it made sense. Her firm was merging, she was on a new team, everyone was stressed. But then it didn't stop. The deadlines passed. The crunch died down. And still, she came home at 9, sometimes 10 p.m., claiming she was catching up or mentoring the newer hires. Always vague. Always smiling just enough to deflect suspicion. One night, she came home smelling like men's cologne. It wasn't mine, too sharp, too designer, not something I'd ever wear. I asked her about it and she laughed. Said her boss hugged her goodbye after a big presentation. He's a hugger, she said, waving her hand like it was a harmless quirk. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I even Googled the boss, trying to figure out if he had a reputation for that kind of thing. Nothing came up. Still, I let it go. Then there was the lace underwear. I was doing laundry one weekend while she was out, and when I moved clothes from the washer to the drying rack, I saw them, black, lacy, definitely new. Not her usual style. I couldn't remember the last time she wore lingerie for me. Hell, I couldn't even remember the last time we had S*X without it feeling like a routine. When I asked her about it later, she shrugged. Said she'd bought them a while ago and forgotten. Found them in the back of the drawer, she added with a chuckle. Figured I might as well wear them. But she never did. Not around me. And then there was the phone thing. She used to be careless with her phone. Left it lying around unlocked, volume up, screen lighting up with messages about groceries or memes from her sister. But somewhere along the line, that changed. Now it was always face down. Notifications off. And she had started bringing it with her everywhere, even into the bathroom. One time, while we were watching a movie, a message came in. I glanced at the screen out of habit. She saw me and snatched the phone off the coffee table like it was a bomb about to go off. Then, right in front of me, she accidentally deleted an entire text thread. Oops, she said, pretending to fumble with the touchscreen. Stupid fingers. I let it go. Because that's what you do when you're afraid of the answer. Now, with the gallery fresh in my mind, every little coincidence started rearranging itself into a different picture. A darker one. One that made too much sense. I started thinking about her recent restaurant receipts. Not the ones I saw, but the ones I didn't. She told me she'd been eating in the office. That she was too tired for takeout. But I remembered seeing a receipt once in the trash, 2 entrees, 2 drinks, from a rooftop place in Capitol Hill. That wasn't a solo lunch. I remembered the birthday weekend she said she was spending with her college friend Katie in Portland. They had done this trip for years. It was a tradition. But Katie had posted a photo on Facebook that weekend tagged in Montana. With her boyfriend. Nowhere near Portland. I saw it days later. Mentioned it to Monica. She laughed it off. Said Katie must have changed her plans last minute. I just stayed in the hotel and treated myself, she claimed. Spa wine, you know. I nodded. Said it sounded nice. But I didn't ask again. Why didn't I ask? Because part of me didn't want to know. Because deep down I was afraid she'd look me in the eye and lie again, and I didn't want to know if I could tell the difference anymore. The more I thought, the worse it got. I remembered that time I came home early from work, canceled meeting, and found her sitting in the backyard typing furiously on her laptop. She jumped when she saw me. Slammed it shut. Just emails, she said. Work stuff. I believed her. Or at least, I pretended to. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal, it doesn't feel like a stab wound. It feels like a slow leak. Like something draining out of you while you try to convince yourself nothing's wrong. You make excuses, not just for them, but for yourself. You tell yourself you're imagining things. That maybe you're paranoid. That love requires trust and you're just trying to be a good partner. But now, sitting at that kitchen table, my coffee cold and untouched, I realized that trust wasn't what was holding us together anymore. It was denial. Plain and simple. I grabbed a notebook and started writing everything down. Every strange detail. Every half-truth. Every moment that hadn't sat right. I wasn't sure why I was doing it, maybe to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it. Maybe to remind myself later when I started doubting whether I had overreacted. I knew there would be moments like that. Moments where she would cry or explain or twist the truth into something palatable. But not this time. I needed to remember. And even more than that, I needed to find out the truth, the whole truth. Because no matter how much it hurt, I knew the lies would hurt worse. By the third night after the gallery, I hadn't really slept. I tried, God knows I tried, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Monica's hand on his shoulder, her head tilted back in that effortless laugh, the way her fingers brushed his chest like she'd done it 1,000 times before. So I stopped trying to sleep. At 3:17 a.m. I got out of bed, walked past our bedroom where she lay sleeping like nothing had changed, and went downstairs to the hallway where she'd left her bag. I hesitated, stared at it like it was a live wire. I'd never gone through her things before. Not in our 10 years together. Not even when things had gotten bad. But now something had shifted. I didn't feel guilty. I felt entitled. I deserved answers. And she sure as hell wasn't giving them to me. The bag wasn't locked. It never was. She never thought I'd look. Inside, I found a few receipts crumpled at the bottom, coffee shops, parking garages, nothing that stood out until one caught my eye. A printed restaurant bill dated the previous Thursday night. 2 glasses of wine. 1 tiramisu. Rooftop lounge, downtown Seattle. That same night, Monica told me she was at a women's networking workshop. She even came home with one of those cheap canvas tote bags you get from those events. I remember her holding it up like a trophy. Look, even came with a branded notepad, she'd said with a grin. But the receipt told a different story. It wasn't for a workshop. It was a dinner. For 2. A casual dessert shared between strangers doesn't end with a rooftop bill and wine. You don't eat tiramisu with someone you're just mentoring. I took a picture of the receipt and put it back exactly where I found it. My heart was pounding, but not from nerves, from clarity. I felt more awake than I had in months. Next, I went to her laptop. It was still open on the dining table, charging. She always used it for work, but she also used it for everything else. I knew her password, my birthday. The irony didn't escape me. I opened the browser. She hadn't cleared her tabs. There it was. One tab open to a flower delivery site. An order summary. Delivery address, 8th Avenue, Unit 409. Message, for your presentation, you were brilliant. M. Recipient, Eli. My stomach turned. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I exhaled hard enough to fog up the screen. Eli. The man from the gallery. The one she had danced with like I wasn't in the room. The man whose cufflinks I found under her seat. Now he had her flowers and God knows what else. I started clicking through her bookmarks. Half were innocuous, Pinterest, a recipe blog she hadn't touched in months. But then I opened her cloud drive. It auto-synced with her phone, something she set up years ago and probably forgot about. I scrolled through the photo folders. Most were work screensh *TS, Instagram drafts, travel pics. But there was a private album. Unnamed. Inside were images I'll never forget. The first was innocent enough, Monica sitting at a bar, holding a drink. But beside her, cropped just shy of his face, was the outline of a man in a suit. His hand rested on her leg. The second photo showed them at a cafe. She was in his lap, laughing, looking at him the way she used to look at me on our best days. Her hand cupped his face like he was something fragile and precious. But the third photo nearly broke me. It was a mirror selfie from what looked like a hotel bathroom. Monica was holding her phone in one hand, her other hand tugging gently at the collar of her blouse, exposing just enough to make it unmistakably an asterisk mate. She was smiling. Playfully. Her hair damp like she'd just stepped out of the shower. In the background, there was a second toothbrush. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not crying. Not screaming. Just staring, like maybe if I looked long enough, I'd convince myself it was photoshopped or staged. But it wasn't. It was real. All of it. These weren't accidents. These weren't misunderstandings. These were choices. Documented. Timestamped. Archived in digital clarity. I took screensh *TS. Every last one. Then I logged out of her cloud and closed the laptop. I sat there in the dark for another hour, the house silent around me. Upstairs, she was still asleep. Peaceful. Dreaming, probably. Meanwhile, I was wide awake, knowing with certainty that the woman I had built a life with was living a second one behind my back. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment everything shifts. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the deception. The architecture of it. The precision. The effort it must have taken to juggle the lies, hide the receipts, take those photos, and still look me in the eye every morning and ask if I wanted coffee. She had become a stranger in plain sight. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I acted like everything was normal. I made breakfast. She came downstairs in yoga pants and a messy bun, yawning, stretching, complaining about how she didn't sleep well. I nodded, smiled a little, said, yeah, same here. We sat at the kitchen table in silence, eating eggs and toast like two coworkers who barely knew each other. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her phone and throw it across the room. I wanted to hold up the receipts and the photos and the flowers and ask her, what else are you hiding from me? But I didn't. Because something deeper than rage had taken root in me now. Resolve. I was going to be smart. I was going to be careful. And when I made my move, she wasn't going to see it coming. Because when someone spends months turning your marriage into a lie, you learn how to play quiet. You learn how to watch without blinking. You learn how to plan. There's a specific kind of silence that follows the moment you know something for sure. It's not peaceful. It's not even calm. It's heavy. Like a fog that wraps itself around your brain and presses down on every thought. That's the silence I lived in for the next few days. Not because I was unsure of what to do, but because I knew exactly, and it was **ing me. I didn't confront Monica. I didn't scream, or accuse, or demand answers I already had. Instead, I became methodical. Quiet. Focused. I started gathering everything. It began with that receipt from the rooftop bar. I scanned it and saved it to a hidden folder on my laptop. Then came the flower order, the photos from her cloud account, and a few hotel confirmations buried in her email. Each one was a dagger. Each one I labeled by date, time, and location. I told myself it wasn't just about building a case, it was about preserving the truth. Because I knew Monica would try to spin it if I confronted her too early. She'd cry. She'd beg. She'd say all the right words, the ones that once meant something but now rang hollow. I couldn't afford to let her write the ending. I needed facts. I needed a timeline. I needed to be 10 steps ahead. So I kept collecting. The next target was our joint bank account. I started scanning the statements from the last year. Line by line. Month by month. It was all there, hidden in plain sight, spa charges during work retreats, hotel transactions under obscure names, boutique gift shops in neighborhoods she never went to with me. One charge jumped out, a jewelry store. $580. 2 months ago. She never wore anything new. Nothing I noticed, at least. I opened her dresser drawers late one night while she was in the shower. Neatly lined up, nothing looked out of place until I checked the small velvet box tucked behind her scarves. Inside was a bracelet, rose gold, delicate, expensive. Still tagged. Still pristine. A receipt from that same jewelry store folded neatly underneath. No note. No initials. No explanation. It wasn't for me. And it clearly hadn't been meant for her either. I added it to the folder. Took photos. Labeled them. Then came the emails. Monica had always been too trusting of technology. Her email was still logged in on our old shared desktop, the one she assumed I never touched anymore. She was right, I hadn't. Until now. Most of it was work junk. Reports, corporate updates, newsletters. But a few messages, buried under a subject line labeled, Friday dinner plans, revealed the rest. She and Eli had been emailing for months. Sometimes innocently, flirting hidden between updates and feedback. Other times, not so much. There were plans for meetups, follow-ups to amazing nights, and one in particular, dated just before our anniversary, where she told him, "He suspects nothing. I hate lying, but I can't stop thinking about you. Being around you feels like the only time I can breathe." I didn't cry when I read it. I just stared, like I'd gone numb in the worst way. Breathing. That word stuck with me. For years, Monica used to say I was her calm, that I was the person she could exhale around. Now, apparently, I was the thing suffocating her. I took **TS, all of them, saved them to an encrypted drive, password protected. then backed it up to a flash drive and slipped it into the inside pocket of my leather jacket. If anything happened, if she found out, if she tried to destroy it, I'd still have it. The next step was harder. I made an appointment with a lawyer. Not in Seattle. Too risky. Too easy for word to get around. Instead, I drove 2 hours south to a small office in Olympia. I didn't want to walk into a local firm and see someone who went to school with her or served us wine at some work gala. The lawyer was blunt, efficient. Her name was Dana. She didn't smile much. After she read through the folder, she looked up at me and asked one question. Do you want revenge or a clean exit? Stunned me how direct it was. For a moment, I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to ruin Monica, to make Eli's life a living hell, to expose them both. But another part, one that felt heavier, more grounded, just wanted to get out with my dignity intact. No explosions. No screaming. Just the truth and the exit I should have taken a long time ago. I want out, I said. She nodded. Then here's what we do. Dana explained everything, how to file in my favor, how to protect assets, how to avoid emotional traps. She told me to gather 3 months of financials, proof of residency, and to stop using our shared accounts as soon as possible. Then she gave me a checklist. Precise. Unemotional. A map out of the wreckage. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I needed the quiet. I needed to sit with the weight of it. The sun was starting to set behind the trees as I reached the edge of our neighborhood. The houses looked the same as always. Painted fences, trimmed hedges, the occasional dog barking through a window. But everything felt different, like the ground had tilted just enough to knock the balance out of everything I thought I knew. When I pulled into the driveway, Monica's car was already there. I didn't go inside right away. I just sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel. This was still my house, still my life, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Felt like a set, like I was walking through scenes that had already ended. Eventually, I went inside. Monica was in the kitchen making tea. She looked up and smiled. Hey, you're back late. Everything okay? Yeah, I said. Just errands. She walked over, kissed my cheek, and turned back to the kettle. Like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't cheating on me in stolen hotel rooms and digital shadows. I watched her from across the room, memorizing every movement. The way she held the mug. The way she leaned against the counter like she belonged there. And for a second, it all felt like déjà vu. Like I had already lived this moment except in another timeline. One where none of this had happened. One where her smile was still real, and I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. That night, I moved into the guest room. She didn't ask why. Maybe she didn't want to know. Maybe she knew and hoped ignoring it would make it disappear. I stared at the ceiling for hours, remembering our wedding. The way she looked when she walked down the aisle. The way her voice cracked during her vows. I used to think that was because she was overwhelmed with love. Now I wonder if it was guilt even then. Funny how everything looks different in hindsight. By morning, I had made up my mind. The exit wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be precise, strategic, complete, because I wasn't going to let her turn this into something she could rewrite. The facts were mine now, and soon the freedom would be too. I picked a Thursday, not because it had any meaning, but because it didn't. It was just another day in the middle of an ordinary week. Quiet, forgettable. The kind of day that wouldn't set off alarms in her head. And I needed that. I didn't want suspicion. I wanted silence. I wanted clarity. I wanted her to walk through the front door, drop her keys in the tray by the stairs, and be completely unprepared for what was waiting. That was the point. She came home at 7:42 p.m. Not late enough to justify it, not early enough to seem honest. Her makeup was fresh. A little too perfect for someone who claimed to have been slammed at the office all day. Her heels clicked softly on the hardwood as she walked in, the sound somehow sharper than usual. I was already at the dining table, just sitting there, waiting. There was an envelope in front of me. Plain, cream-colored, unassuming, but heavy with everything it contained. She froze when she saw me. I think she knew. Or maybe she just felt the shift in the room, the way the air had thickened, the weight of something unspoken pressing against her ribcage. Hey, she said casually, setting her purse down. You're home early. I didn't answer. Instead, I nodded toward the envelope. What's that? She asked. I waited a second before speaking. I wanted the silence to stretch just long enough to make her nervous. It's for you, I said. You should sit down. She didn't move at first. Just looked at me like she was trying to do the math. Trying to guess which version of the story she'd need to tell, what level of truth would keep me from walking. Eventually, she stepped forward and took the seat across from me. The envelope sat between us like a third person in the room. Still. Silent. Full of things that couldn't be unsaid. She reached for it. Her hands were steady. Too steady. When she opened it, the first thing she pulled out was the top page, the divorce petition. Her eyes scanned the heading and her breath caught. Just for a moment. Then came the photos. The dinner receipt from the rooftop lounge. The flower order to Eli with her message, "You were brilliant." The selfies from her cloud account, him beside her at the bar, her in his lap at the cafe, and the one in the hotel bathroom. The bracelet receipt. The emails. The timeline. The coordinates. Everything. I didn't say a word as she flipped through them. Her lips parted once like she was about to speak, but then closed again. Her face didn't crumble. She didn't cry. She didn't even look away. She just sat there. Still. Finally, she asked, "How long have you known?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was such a classic Monica response, evasive, clinical, focused on the detail instead of the damage. Long enough, I said. A silence followed, heavier than before. She glanced down at the last page, her thumb resting on the printed line where her name was supposed to go. "You want a divorce," she said softly. "No," I replied. "I need one." Her gaze lingered on the paper. Then she looked up at me. "Are you going to tell Joan?" That caught me off guard, not because she asked, but because she said our daughter's name like it still meant something we shared. Like this mess didn't change everything. Joan was away at college. 21. Studying environmental science and photography. Bright, kind, emotionally intuitive in the way Monica never was. I had thought about calling her more than once, especially during the long nights when I'd been sitting in the guest room planning this moment. But I hadn't. And I wouldn't. Not yet. She doesn't need to know the details, I said. Not now. But one day? Yeah. She'll know. Monica nodded like that was fair. Like she couldn't argue with that. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. I said nothing. She looked down again, eyes skimming the documents like she was trying to find a loophole. A door she could still slip through. A version of this ending where she didn't have to lose everything. There was something missing, she said suddenly. Between us. And I didn't know how to fix it. So you burned it down, I said quietly. She flinched just a little. But it was the first real reaction I'd seen from her. The first sign that something human still lived behind her carefully arranged face. I didn't want it to end like this, she said. But it did. Another silence. This one final. She stared at the paperwork for a few more seconds, then pushed the envelope gently back across the table. Do I have time to process this? You have time to sign it, I said. That's all I need. Her eyes shimmered, but the tears didn't fall. Not yet. Monica had always cried strategically. When it served her. When it meant something. I don't think she knew how to cry when it didn't buy her anything. She stood up slowly, picked up her purse, paused. I'm sorry, James. She said it like it mattered. Like sorry was some kind of glue that could put broken glass back together. I didn't respond. She walked down the hall into the bedroom, our bedroom, and shut the door behind her. I stayed at the table, staring at the envelope, at the documents, at the ring sitting beside them. It was strange. I didn't feel the relief I thought I would, or the rage, or even the satisfaction of being right. I just felt empty. Like something sacred had died and I was the one left to bury it. The next morning I woke up early. She was still in the bedroom. I could hear her moving around quiet, cautious. Like a tenant in someone else's house. I didn't knock. I didn't speak. I grabbed a duffel bag, packed some clothes, and left. No slammed doors. No final argument. No, we'll talk later. Just me walking out the front door, the cold air on my skin, and the weight of silence following me like a shadow. When I reached the car, I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the house for a long time. It looked smaller now. Like a stage set after the actors have gone home. A place where something used to happen. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because some betrayals are too dry for tears. Instead, I turned the key, backed out of the driveway, and drove. No destination. No music. Just the quiet hum of the engine and the sound of everything I thought I knew unraveling in reverse. I didn't move out right away. Instead, I moved around her. Like a ghost. Every day I removed something, my watch, my books, my jackets, from the house we once called ours. One item at a time. No announcements. No accusations. Just silent extraction. Monica didn't say much. Maybe she noticed, maybe she didn't. We lived like strangers under the same roof. She stayed in the bedroom. I slept in the guest room. We passed each other like people in a hotel lobby, polite, distant, empty. I changed passwords. Rerouted mail. Set up new accounts in my name only. Our wedding photo disappeared from the mantle one morning. So did the little box of anniversary cards we kept in the hall closet. She never asked why. A week later, I filed the paperwork.